Hey everyone, Keith Billick here. Welcome to another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. I hope you are all having a great day today. I am always having a great day when I get a chance to talk to you all about life. And by life, I mean banjos and banjo music, of course. And well, this is one of those days, so I'm happy you can join me for this. You know what? It's not too often that I get to announce an official Picky Fingers live event, but here we go. I have just planned to be at Elderly Instruments up in Lansing, Michigan on Saturday, March 9th to interview the great Jim Pankey. A lot of you know him from his fantastic banjo playing and his amazing instructional videos that he has all over social media and YouTube. So I can't wait to talk to Jim, ask him about all that stuff and a lot more, and it's going to happen live in front of listeners. So if you are there, you might even get a chance to ask your own question of Jim and make it on the podcast yourself. That's when you've really hit the big time, folks. And Jim is actually doing his own separate Meet the Banjo event right before the interview. So check all that out on Elderly's website. That's elderly.com. You know, between Elderly Instruments and Peghead Nation and Sullivan Banjos, I'm really lucky to have some amazing sponsors of the show. But you know what really ties that all together is the support of you listeners. And the VIP listeners of the show, the very important pickers, are the ones who sign up over on patreon.com/banjopodcast to throw in a few dollars per month just to support what I do and make sure the show keeps happening. And let me tell you, I could not do it without supporters such as Dalton Howard. Dalton is the VIP supporter of the show. He said he started listening to the episodes from the beginning, and at the time that he emailed me, he was on episode 25. So he might not hear this for, I don't know, a couple years. I'm not sure how fast he's listening, but either way, Dalton, whenever you're hearing this, I still appreciate all of your generous support. And once again, all the support of everyone just like yourself who signed up on patreon.com/banjopodcast. Check that out. There's amazing rewards in exchange. You can also email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com or track me down on social media. Give me all the, likes and follows on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube. That all really helps a lot. So if you're listening to this on one of those platforms, please just, click the buttons. Today we have a freshly picked episode to look at the brand new solo album from the king of jamgrass banjo himself, Kyle Tuttle. A lot of you regular listeners might remember getting to know Kyle a bit way back in episode 18. So we were way overdue for checking up on Kyle, hearing what he has been up to. Well, I'm here to tell you that Kyle is much more than just a dude who looks super cool jumping around on stage with his crazy green hair and whatnot. He can outright pick. He's the full-time banjoist for the Grammy award-winning group Molly Tuttle and Golden Highway, and he's just recorded an outstanding banjo album, which I was very excited to talk to him about here. And you'll get to listen to it right now. So give a warm Picky Fingers welcome to Kyle Tuttle talking about his brand new album titled Labor of Lust. So hey, Kyle. It's great to see you again. We're here to talk about your new album, which is called Labor of Lust. But before we launch into that, I looked it up, and it was actually like 5 years ago that you were last on the podcast. So I know that a lot has happened with you in the meantime. Give us like a whirlwind update on the life of and the banjo playing career of Kyle Tuttle since we last spoke. What are you up to?
Wow. Okay. Right on. Yeah. Howdy, Keith. It's awesome to be here, man. Stoked to be back for round two, with you, yeah. Whirlwind 5 years of my life. Let's see. I was, let's see, when we last spoke, I was playing in Jeff Austin's band, and that's what we were, and you came to the gig, right?
So no, I came to you had filled in on a stretch with
it was with Town Mountain. Mm-hmm.
But I believe you were in Jeff Austin's band at that time, and you were maybe in the infancy stages of getting the KTB off the ground, and this is pre-COVID, of course.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm thinking about the room there at the Otis Supply, where we sat in the back and did the interview.
Exactly.
And I had been there with I was there a couple times with Jeff, and then I was also there with the Town Mountain fellers. So you're right. That's the time. That's the time that it was. Since then, I've done a handful of gigs, handful of ups, a handful of downs, as you'll have, as we'll all have. And the music, semi reflects that. I mean, I guess that some of the parts on this record, some of the tracks on this record are about as old as that meeting that we had together.
Interesting.
Some of it was recorded in the fall of 2018. So this record, I guess, pretty well spans that whirlwind of information. KTB was in its infancy. You're right. There was, and that was a big focus for me at that time. COVID sort of got in the way. Slowed down the momentum that I had, if any, just towards actually playing shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And I had drums in the band at that time, in my band, mostly. I had my buddy James playing drums, and James Kittleman. And the COVID thing, I ended up, for some reason, just out of ease, I guess, turning my band sort of into a trio. I started having the bass and the fiddle and the banjo, so the big fiddle and the little fiddle and me, and I found that I really liked the sound of that as a unit. You can kind of fake being a little bluegrass band. You're not quite a bluegrass band, but you got enough of the elements to fake it for a little while,
most of the timbres are there somewhere.
Yeah, the fiddle and the banjo do a lot there, and the fiddle can chop pretty good. So when the banjo's rolling and the fiddle's chopping, or even playing long stuff, it can feel enough like a bluegrass band. But then we can also do some real creative other textural stuff, and the looseness of the show and the improv areas get a little bit easier when you got just three people. So anyway, that was COVID sort of did that to my band. And so unexpectedly, but that was kind of cool, so some of the record reflects that. I ended up playing with the Lil Smokies for a year. And so that was a big part of getting back out of that thing and getting on the road. It also slowed down my time doing KTB stuff because I spent a lot of time out with the Smokies. And then I got a call from Molly Tuttle, the one and only Molly Tuttle, that was creating Golden Highway, and so that's obviously the kind of call that you don't turn down when you get.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've played in some real nice jam bands, Lil Smokies, Jeff Austin, and such. But it seems like Molly's band is really broadening the visibility and the type of headlining shows that you've done. Is that fair to say?
That's absolutely true, for sure.
So talk a little bit about the main things that, I don't know, you had going for you that prepared you for that gig, or maybe some like challenges of being in a band that has taken the next step like that. What are some of the challenges that maybe you didn't see coming?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's kind of a hard question, I guess. the bigger stages are different sound wise. I mean, I guess that might be a big part of it. You start to be louder, and when you're louder, there's more potential for something like feedback with your instrument, on a basic level, but also you just hear your instrument more, and you want it to sound as good as you can. And, so it sort of brings, then we have our own crew of people traveling with us, running our monitors and running our front of house every night. So that gives us more stability in that we've got the same situation sort of being recreated, and more people that know how to treat the sounds that we're working on and understand where you're at. So that's cool. That's a nice new element of it for sure.
Yeah, that's got to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, someone like me, I think maybe the thing that I wonder about the most, never having been in that position myself, is like, are there different things that you need to do either physically or mentally as a banjo player to like be ready for those types of situations, or is it kind of just the same thing, just on a different scale?
I think I feel like it's the same thing on a different scale. It's more of, if anxiety gets to anybody, at some point, there's nobody's totally getting away from it,
yeah,
like it or not. And when you get in front of, bigger audiences and stuff, there's a little bit more of like a, oh man, I hope I do a good job. I hope we do a good job tonight. I hope this is not disappointing to the people, or to someone's expectations of it or something. I guess, maybe the pressure, maybe there's a little more pressure, but I try not to think about that.
Yeah. Or at least try to make it work for you instead of against you, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's not, it's exciting. It's not, that to me, the bigger stuff isn't nerve-wracking. It's exciting,
Nice. Well, it's an awesome show, man. I've caught you a couple times. It's totally badass.
Thank you very much.
So let's dive into the album, which I think anyone who's followed your career will be pleasantly rewarded. That it seems to be like a tour of all of all the sides of Kyle Tuttle, all in this album, or at least it seems like it. A lot of different facets. So like the first song, which is Hard to Say, which is also the first single off the record.
Feeling like I'm running in my place, closing in, about to lose that race. It's hard to say what makes a good man act that way, maybe longing for another time and place. Knowing that it's gone and gone for good makes you wonder what the hell you're waiting on, when it seems like such a short time to be here and a long time to be gone.
And this one's an original song, and so I guess I'm also wondering, is songwriting a new thing for you? I know your first album was all instrumental, if I'm remembering right. So I'm wondering if this is a new thing, or maybe you just haven't bothered to show it off so much and kept it a secret.
Well, I've always been writing. I was in a punk rock band when I was a teenager and wrote screaming songs about being a vegetarian and how it would save the world if nobody ate meat anymore, and ridiculous things like that. I shouldn't say ridiculous things like that. Heartfelt, strong opinions like that. So I've been writing. I've been writing something forever, but I don't know. I wasn't trying to do that with my band. Maybe it took a while for that to come around, because that first record, like you said, is an instrumental record. Once I took a band on the road to tour that Bobcat album around 2016, I didn't want to just play an instrumental show, and I wanted to sing some songs and have that be a part of the event. But I don't write a lot, it comes in waves, and it's not like a craft. I don't like craft it, really. At least not like some Nashville cats do,
Absolutely. But even despite the fact that maybe you don't craft it, as you put it, I don't know if I would consider it a concept album, but there are a lot of songs that seem to reflect sort of that same idea that you've already mentioned about having some ups and downs and having to find ways of persevering and psyching yourself up for whatever the next challenge is going to be. Was that intentional? Did you write songs in the same vein, or is that just reflective of where you were at the point?
That wasn't intended that way at all. Loss is definitely an undertone of the album, loss and dealing with it, death, and just mourning change, changing situations in life, and throughout the making of the record, which is a long time. The record took about 5 years or something for me to finish making, and during that time, we lost our buddy Jeff Austin, who was a big influence on me. He was my boss at the time. Right. But he was also a friend, and he and a bigger, and more importantly than either of those things, probably an influence to me over time, and during the formative years of my Jamgrass career getting into the Honor Mountain String Band. But then I also ended up going through a divorce during those years, shortly after losing Jeff, and then COVID happened. So that was that's a big, we all dealt with lots of things there, so, and the record, and I kept working on that record. So anyway, I realized that loss was becoming a theme sort of the album, but it didn't, as I was making it, I realized that obviously, but I didn't start out to make a record to deal with that. And I don't want that I don't mean to say that it's only about that. I wouldn't say that's the only theme on the record. It just happens to be there.
Right. Definitely not. And even the parts that are maybe about that, it's usually left with a more hopeful, positive kind of vibe to it as well. It's not just woe is me kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the goal. I don't want to bring anybody down, I mean, I would hope not, at least not too far down,
Well, speaking banjoistically, anyone who was expecting just a straightforward bluegrass record only gets about, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes into it before, it's getting weird already. And we're definitely going to talk a lot on this chat that we're having about banjo tone, because there's a lot of different tones on this album. And also I just put together my first banjo pedal board, so I'm endlessly curious about all the stuff.
Okay.
So the main one we hear on this track is our good old friend, the envelope filter, which those are kind of tricky to dial in. Anyone who's messed with those. Any tips for envelope filter people? What's your stomp box of choice? Have you tried a bunch out, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, man, I've used a bunch over the years, or at least a few over the years. And you're right, it is a tricky sound. There's my favorite at the moment is the Mutron 4. I think it's the most common, or sorry, the most recent one. There's the Microtron. Sorry, the Mutron brand makes a Microtron 4. I think that's what it's called. There's several editions, but the 4 I think is the most current one. I don't have eyes on the board right now, but it's and that's, Jerry used the Mutron, so it's the Jerry Garcia sound. It's my favorite of all the ones that I've used. And it's, right, and there's, and I looked at my tone deal is I just right there in the little booklet that comes with the thing. It's shows you a bunch of different settings, and it's this is the Jerry Garcia sound, and it's the peak, whatever the peak and gain. There's only 3 knobs on the thing, so it's a pretty foolproof. I've used some other ones that have a lot of parameters, and this one just seems to get you there without a lot of options, which is great.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. It's funny on that, you can, one thing that's funny is on Hard to Say there, when it goes into the bridge part and you hear all the, everything takes a vibe change. You can definitely hear me stepping on pedals in the room. There's like a couple little clicks in the thing. If you listen close in the down zone there, because it was all recorded live. So I'm just like dancing around in the room there. It's probably my vocal mics picking it up or something. Who knows what it is, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. That's cool to know that you were doing all that live. I know a lot of people get into the reamping and whatever else, but it's cool that you just did the straight in.
Yeah. I prefer it that way. I think it's because then it's just everyone's hearing it, everyone's hearing it live.
Right.
When you reamp it, man, no one's playing off of those sounds because they don't exist yet,
Yeah, exactly. The second track, I Wonder, this one starts with a technique that I've admired about your playing, and it's kind of reminiscent of like a John Hartford meets Danny Barnes. I kind of refer to it as like a bluegrass chord melody approach. Do you know what I mean? Sort of like a jazz chord melody, but it's rolling and it's bluegrassy. And I don't know, I'm just wondering how you got to that type of approach, or any tips on taking a melody and giving it that type of treatment.
Yeah, man, I'm just trying to be as comprehensive as sonically comprehensive as I can be with it. Like just fill up as much, because a banjo doesn't fill up much sonic space. You know what I mean? It's not like a guitar. You don't have as much low into the guitar. So the idea where it all comes from is just trying to fill that space with as much chordal content that's not the melody, that you can really get a picture for not only the melody, but what's happening underneath it, on the banjo. And that's I just prefer that when I'm playing by myself. I want to hear as much stuff, and that's how the intro of that tune is. It all starts with one time through the form on just the banjo, and then the band comes in,
exactly,
and joins along and stuff.
I think that type of thing is probably what made it work so well for the trio that you were already talking about. When you're doing something like that, it's easier to not miss having a guitar playing along.
Right. Totally. And if there's a guitar playing along, it's harder actually to hear, all that minute stuff, that's coming out of the banjo.
That's awesome. Let's go to Ground Speed, which is like just shred version of Ground Speed. It sounds like at this point you've switched to a solid body banjo as opposed to an acoustic that's going through effects. Is that right?
Yeah, Ground Speed is played on a Ian Davidson electric banjo. It's a dude out of Arcata, California.
And what's the basic setup on that? Is it roughly like a single coil pickup, like a Telecaster type of thing, or what's the vibe of that one?
This one, it's like a solid body. It's really cool, man. It's really fun to play. It's a solid body. It's got a head that's like 8 inches probably, so it's got around an 8-inch head. So the bridge is a banjo bridge, still a wooden banjo bridge sitting on a head just like normal, so that's where you get the decay of the note, which is ideal. So it's solid body. it's or semi-hollow or whatever you'd want to call it, but it's still got the bridge on a head, and so the notes do decay like a banjo, which is key about the whole thing.
That's exactly why I asked, because if you do any type of rolling and definitely melodic stuff on most solid body banjos, it's just a mess.
Yeah,
and you seem to be able to do it, and that seems like it's probably why.
It's still you still have to wrestle it a little bit, but that has a whole lot to do with it. Then it's got 2 pickups. And it blends them. It's a Seymour Duncan hot rails. So it's like a single coil body with a humbucker, I guess, in it. I don't completely understand how it works, but
it's like a humbucker smushed into a single coil.
Right. It's just got
size.
2 little rods going down it, So in the neck position, it's got a Seymour Duncan hot rails, and under the bridge, it's got a piezo, or piezo, or however you say it, pickup. And there's a knob on the body that just goes left to right. One way is one and the other way is the other. And honestly, if you just split it down the middle, it's like pretty dang good. I like to lean it on the electric side, on the hot rail side, just a little bit,
Yeah.
But it's sweet, man. It's got a little bit of a radius fingerboard and a little bit of a shorter scale, so you can sort of make you can make a couple stretches that are a little easier to get,
that's nice.
So, which if you really get way up the neck, I mean, it might even be such a shorter scale that it's like a whole fret shorter or something up in the small zone, So you can really do some fun stuff way up the neck on it.
Oh, that seems cool. I'll have to check those out. Sorry for the interruption, folks. We'll be right back with the rest of the episode in just a few moments, but I had to take this opportunity to tell you about some of the sponsors of Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. The first one up is Elderly Instruments. I always tell people how Elderly is the world's most trusted source for new, used, and vintage stringed instruments of all kind. They're the first place I go for all my banjo needs, and also, by the way, any guitar, violin, ukulele, mandolin needs you have, they're going to have all of that. But you don't need to take my word for it anymore, folks. Elderly Instruments was just named the best small business in the country by the United States Chamber of Commerce. So first of all, congratulations to Stan Werbin, Lillian Werbin, and all the rest of the Elderly family for that remarkable award. And second of all, I encourage you all to go see what the fuss is about. Either get into the showroom in Lansing, Michigan, or visit them online at elderly.com. They have the entire inventory up there. They ship worldwide, and they have that great customer service that wins folks awards. And they're just a phone call away if you ever need any advice on any of those products. So once again, elderly.com, or call them at 517-372-7880. The Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast is also sponsored by our good friends over at Peghead Nation. Peghead Nation is the nation's #1 site for streaming video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele, where you can learn bluegrass, old time, and many other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in all of roots music. Here is some of the selections, and this is just the banjo stuff. You can take beginning banjo with Bill Evans, bluegrass banjo with Bill Evans, clawhammer banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward style banjo with Bruce Molsky, the banjo according to Danny Barnes, or contemporary bluegrass banjo with Wes Corbett. Now, no matter what course you select, it's going to come with high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tablature, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes and songs to play. And perhaps best of all, Picky Fingers listeners get a month free by entering coupon code PICKYFINGERS, all one word, all lowercase, at checkout. So once more, go to pegheadnation.com and enter Picky Fingers at checkout to get your first month free. The Picky Fingers podcast is also brought to you by Sullivan Banjos. Now, I'm very familiar with Sullivan Banjos. I've been playing one for nearly 20 years. I get tons of compliments on that banjo's sound, and that's really no surprise because the Sullivan name has been synonymous with incredible banjo workmanship and tone for decades. So whether you are looking for a pre-war style traditional design on through the craziest custom design you can think of, Eric Sullivan is here for you to make your dreams a reality. So get in touch with him over at sullivanbanjo.com, email him at sullivanbanjo@gmail.com, or sometimes the best way is just the old-fashioned way. Give him a call at 502-365-5022. And don't forget to tell him that Keith at the Picky Fingers Podcast sent you. One of the things that always blows me away about your playing is you just seem to have an endless stream of creative ideas that you're coming up with. And I think over a tune like Ground Speed, it can kind of be daunting, especially when it's like one chord for just large sections. And I don't know, I'd love to hear you just talk about like your approaches for coming up with ways of making Ground Speed interesting, because you're doing a lot on this track.
Well, oh man, well, thank you very much, Keith. That's humbling. You're flattering me over here. Nobody can see, but I would be blushing. I've done the contest thing. I've done banjo contest playing like quite a bit, you know. And that is like taking like four times. Typically in a contest arrangement, you're going to play it like 4 times or maybe even 5 times a tune. Play when I say it, I mean. Any standard fiddle tune or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I have literally just sat down and arranged those type of things and tried to make them interesting on 4 passes over it, you know. So I've got, I guess, experience in it in that regard, in trying to actually compose. I mean, that's more like composing, you know, because you're sitting down and preparing your licks ahead of time and stuff. And and I can tell you, you know, on the Ground Speed track there, the cut that made it on the record, which is live, it's not chopped up and stuff. There's parts of that banjo solo that are improvised, and there's parts of them there's parts of them that are little things that I've used in a contest before. So so is it improvised? Not quite. If it's a lick, you know, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like I'm jamming on that tune, and I throw in a couple little licks that I've used in my contest thing that I know is going to work, and then I'm up the neck, and then I slide around and improvise on some stuff, and then throw in another little thing you know is going to work, and then I improvise the little way out of it, you know, and that's what happens to be on that track. Then Duncan Wickel plays a fiddle through the Strymon Leslie speaker emulator thing. And that sounds totally wild and crazy. And then Max Johnson plays flat picks on electric fuzz bass solo. So I hope Earl is not rolling in his grave, man. I would like to think that he would dig it.
He might be, but whatever. I enjoy it anyway.
Yeah, Max like plays Scruggs licks on that track. You got to check it out, man. I mean, he's literally like and that's all. Like he was like basically looking at me with a shit-eating grin and playing Earl Scruggs on the bass on a flat picking electric bass. I was just like, I still lose it when I listen to that. It just cracks me up. You know, it's good. He's good, and it's tasteful and tasteless at the same time.
The first couple times I listened to it, I actually considered that it might be you playing banjo through like a pitch shift. That's how much he nails the Scruggs licks on the bass.
I know.
And finally I'm like, no, that's a bass, but That's crazy.
That's good. Well, that would be a high compliment. I got to remember to tell Max that, because he'll get a kick out of that, man.
Oh, please do. Yeah, it's great. So I'll press you a little more on the first thing that I asked, which is, so you kind of said you rely on your skills as like a contest player to find these variations and stuff. What's your approach to doing that then? If you were going to a contest in a couple months and you knew you wanted to, it doesn't even need to be about ground speed, but what are your general approaches for crafting these cool variations on melodies? I know that's a wide open question.
Well, like the most checklist, if you were to make a checklist of what you wanted to do in it, which is like sort of where you start, right? I mean, you're going to want to play the melody real good and real clean in a way that everybody hears and understands and knows what tune it is, and then you're going to want to quote enough of the melody within that second round that it's still apparent what you're doing, and you're not just going alpha into noodle world, and you also probably use that second round to get up the neck a little bit, and it's weird, man. Almost all of these tunes are 30 seconds long. Like a pass through any fiddle tune, whether it's slow or whether it's fast or whatever, it's like
30 seconds.
Yeah, a lot of them, I swear to God, a lot of them just add up to like, between 25 and 35 seconds or something like that,
Wow. Okay.
And so you've got like at Winfield is the main one at the Walnut Valley Festival that I've done a bunch of times. And the timing on that one, that's the National Banjo Contest. And the timing there is 5 minutes in your round. And you're advised to play 2 tunes. Pretty much everyone plays 2 tunes. So like an average, and you need to tune, you're going to need to tune, change your capo or something like that in between the 2 songs, make sure your banjo's in tune, ready to do the next one. So you need to not feel rushed in that time in the middle. So, and it's like Price is Right. You can't go over. You can stay under and you're safe and everything's cool. But if you go over, you're out, you're disqualified.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, if the thing is 30 seconds long and you play it 4 times, that's 2 minutes. If you do that twice, that's 4 minutes. That still leaves you 1 minute of space.
A minute,
to get all your tuning and stuff like that done, and to also get out saved by the bell before the alarm hits, or whatever, right? So, so 4 times through anything is pretty much what I would do in a contest, as long as it was in that 30-second range, which it probably was going to be. So with that in mind, the first time, like I said, you're going to nail the melody. The second time, you're going to make sure you quote enough of the melody and you climb up the neck a little bit. The third time is the one where you can like really sort of go nuts up there. And it's easier to go nuts and shoot some fireworks off up the neck, and then the fourth time, you're probably going to want to essentially have gotten yourself back down, maybe start the melody high, but use the second A part to get it back down low enough that you're still like that you're back down in the money range of the banjo, below the 5th fret by the time you're playing the last B part of the tune, and you can close it out like Scruggs, as banjo-y as you can be. That's like the arc that I would shoot for if I were
gotcha
make it when I do a contest type arrangement.
Do you feel like even when you're taking a solo that is not pre-arranged, do you feel like that sensibility creeps into your playing and you play with that sort of approach even when it's completely improvised?
A lot of times, yeah, because that's a pretty good, decent shape to work.
Right on. Let's move ahead to Scorch on the Porch. When do you realize that a tune is going to be like a rock organ with like a halftime drum beat tune rather than more of a bluegrass treatment?
See, that's a funny one. That's a good one to move to because I have used it in a contest. I actually played it at Winfield the time that I won. So that's like a national banjo champion approved song or some silly thing. And then there's that version of it on the record that goes to like quarter time, giant drum beat. I'm playing at one point. Duncan Wickel is playing fiddle through that Leslie simulator, and I'm playing it all on a Pog on that electric banjo with a octave generator, 3-octave generator. Right. So that's and it's got a measure of 5/4. So that one it contains multitudes that, and any tune can sort of go either direction. I think if you choose to entertain creating this goofball version of it,
Definitely. Were you just wanting to hear something, since you probably played it to death leading up to the contest? Did you just feel like you wanted to hear something different out of it? Was that kind of your thing?
As far as recording it that way, you mean?
For the record, yeah.
No, I don't think it was that, man. I think I just and like I said, my band had drums, and my buddy James Kittleman is a killer drummer and just always creative and down with doing something like that. You know what I mean? And so with him, with someone else there that's willing and able to be an awesome part of it and make it happen like that, you just like, well, hell yeah, we're going to do that.
Yeah, right on. Well, that one's huge sounding. Not quite spring. This one kind of cracked me up when I heard you talk about it on one of your live streams over COVID. So maybe do the spiel on this one. Tell everyone what this one's all about.
Almost skin and bones, darling, nothing left to see. If you don't believe me, count the days I'm gone. Here and there and here, there's happy little trees, but I'm lost out in the brush strokes all alone. Oh, Bobby, won't you paint me an airplane? Oh, Bobby, won't you paint me a fast train? Bobby, can you paint me a banjo tune? Bobby, can you paint me off of this mountain back into my living room?
It's about being painted into a Bob Ross painting. About you, the listener, being painted into the Bob Ross painting, or the singer, or something. It was during COVID, like you said, and I was sitting on the couch and watching a lot of that show. Maybe there may have been a bong hit or two involved in this, in it too, And he paints. Okay, so he paints. Every episode has a name. And it's the name of the episode is the name of the painting the name that he gives the painting when he's done with it at the end of the show.
Okay. Right.
And so, most of those paintings that he's done are like streams and mountain sunsets and fields, and they look like they'd be warm and a nice spot to hang out at. Sure. if you were so lucky. But this episode that I was watching was like, he was painting this mountain, this dark, cold mountain with snow, and it was spooky looking and cold. It looks like if you were up there, it would not be a good time, and for some reason, that's the one that I chose as the place to be like, man, what if you were painted into that,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's colder on this mountain than I ever thought it'd be. Won't you paint my darling right here next to me?
There you go.
That's how it
make
starts.
the best of it if you're going to be in the cold Bob Ross painting.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to pedals with circularity. This sounds like Kyle Tuttle locking himself in his bedroom and playing with with your pedal board, or what's the signal chain in this? There's definitely like a bunch of pitch shifting and echo, but maybe like some synth or something. I don't know. Take us through what's going on here.
He definitely is locked in the teenager, locked in the pedal board room, you know. I did have my own little, when we made that record, that was recorded at the Studio 4115 here in Nashville, and I was in my own little isolation booth back there with all my toys, you know. So, and that's just like improv. That track is just like an improvised thing, you know.
Like a soundscape
type thing. There's some improvised composition in that I repeat some phrases over and over again, but those were improvised through at the time, you know, is what I mean.
Sure.
And the signal chain, it is an acoustic banjo. That's just a plain old banjo. Let's see, what would have been going through there? Probably two reverbs. One reverb made by, two delays. One delay by my friend Noise Kick FX out of Baltimore. A delay that's got trails. So you can you can turn off the effect, but you won't lose the wet effect that's been coming from previous stuff. Because a lot of delay pedals, when you turn them off, it's just gone. And
you got to keep the trails going.
That's a very unnatural sound. So there's a trails delay from Noise Kick. There would be a MXR carbon copy delay to usually that one is like extremely short, like a slapback, you know. I just keep it as like a slapback and only one regeneration or whatever. Repeat, one repeat. So there'll be like a tiny slapback, which pretty much just makes your note sound bigger, sound longer. It almost just sounds like one note that's bigger than it was. And so that's short delay, long delay, the Electro-Harmonix POG, the polyphonic octave generator. And what that thing does is it gives you your note and an octave below your note and an octave above your note on 3 different dials. So you can basically accentuate, you can turn up or down any of those things. And my sort of favorite sound with it is to turn down the note that you're actually playing. So then you're only playing these other 2 notes that are then 2 octaves apart from each other, you know?
Right.
And that comes, and
then you don't hear your real note.
Yeah, exactly. You don't hear,
that's crazy.
You don't hear your real pitch. You just hear these 2 other pitches. And so it's not 0% of my note of the note that I'm playing, but it's probably like, I don't remember specifically, but that track is probably like the bass note is turned up. Oh, no. So a lot of times what I do is the bass note would be 75% and the octave up note would be at more like 40 or 50%, because that one can get pretty piercing. Once you get high up on the neck, it's really hard to listen to. But the low one is sweet, and especially if, you know, in the right situation where you get down to the subs in a rock club or something, that note, if they send it that far, you know. So that's cool. Then there would be a reverb, a Holy Grail reverb is basically on my board all the time. That's like the best transparent reverb that I've found, and I've tried a handful of other ones, and it seems like it's popular to have them like color the sound, which I don't want them to color the sound. I just want a transparent reverb. So anyway, the Holy Grail, that's the one that I like. Then we ran that electric signal into a DI that would have gone straight to the house, you know, so you got a clean, you know, clean signal of that sound. And we sent it to some type of old tube amp in the basement that I didn't see, but I heard.
Okay.
And so then,
there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So then you're getting, you know, a mix. What you're finally ending up with is a mix of the DI signal there, which still has all those effects. There's no actual clean banjo as a part of it tracked. Unfortunately, there's not like a third clean banjo line, which could have been a possibility now that I think about it, but we didn't do that.
Right.
So it's the DI line and the amp line of that signal chain.
Yeah, that's cool. Saddle Up seems like another song in our recurring theme of like the main character maybe feeling down and out, maybe having a tough time, but keeping his chin up, staying positive. Is that sort of what you envisioned for this one?
How many days will it be? How many times will I turn around and see your silhouette in the shadow on the wall? Could you be here at all? And I'm tired as hell, but I'm so restless. And I need a break, but nothing takes to slow me down. And my past cannot be where my best is. So I'll saddle up each day and ride my buggy into town.
It's another one that's where loss is, a focal point of the tune of the song, of the lyrical content of the song. Part of the chorus is, my past can't be where my best is, and it's just sort of like we all would hope that we haven't done our best work yet in whatever part of life it is, whether it's playing the banjo or your personal relationships, or with all the different elements of life that we all go through, and struggle with. It's better days ahead. Hopefully, sort of always, is at least the mindset that I was either trying, maybe trying to create, maybe writing it. It's the type of thing that you manifest. Maybe write it down so that you think of it, so that you try and create it or something. But that's sort of the gist of the lyrical content of Saddle Up.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then there's also like a big long jam in it, and that's the same thing. That one deals a lot with Jeff, just thinking a lot of my thoughts and processing of going through losing Jeff and what it means to be a person that so many people look to, and look at. And people like that you might almost think seem invincible to you, but there's more to it than that, especially for them,
Yeah. You mentioned the jam part. Yeah, it's like really great instrumental interplay on that. And I think you've already pretty much described this, but I was wondering what the actual recording setup is. Is everyone in a room, and is that how you were able to play off of each other so much? It definitely sounds live.
That's Dominic Leslie playing mandolin on that track, and Cody Kilby is on guitar, and Travis Book's on bass, and Julian Pinelli's on fiddle. Travis, Cody, and Dom were all in one long room with dividers between them, and then Julian was in another room next to that, continuing in that line of people with glass wall. And then I was actually in another room down the hallway. I have my own.
Okay.
I have my own space, so I could hear everybody, but I could not see them.
So it was a live take, but not immediately in the same space, I guess.
Totally. So they could have. Okay. So who knows what they could have been mouthing around the room. No, I'm just kidding. So everything was live. The whole session was live, and everybody was just in those situations.
Yeah, I can tell. That one in particular really made me notice the interplay. But yeah, there's a lot of that type of stuff happening. It's great.
Yeah.
Two Big Hearts. This one is really interesting. This one could be like 3 songs in one. The initial like shredding solo, it's very deceptive because it sounds whatever, all nice. You have this almost like mariachi sixths type of melody happening, but you get to some vintage Kyle Tuttle shredding sections, which is great. I'm wondering if you could go over, do you have any special techniques that you might be able to share with how you play triplets? You just have a way of like these cascading triplets that are on full display here. And I don't know if you have different things come up or is there any single approach that you get a lot of mileage out of that you would be able to share?
Well, man, thanks. I'm glad you dig it for sure. The triplet thing, it's all, I guess, forward rolls. I think it's all forward rolls. And yeah, a lot of forward rolls and like, keeping the index and middle fingers on the first string while maybe you could bounce your thumb might like move to other strings, but the index and middle stay up on the first string, as you keep some of those patterns going. So
Okay.
The index can also go down to the first string. So there can be a lot of like only one note moving and only one note repeating, and then one note moving every third time or every sixth time
3
or
notes,
every something like that. Yeah. So that's maybe that's the technique that's going on there.
Yeah, I'll have to decode that somehow. And then back to effects. Is that a real Leslie that the banjo is going through for part of that?
Yeah, that is a real Leslie. Man, it's awesome. That was so cool. Megan McCormick engineered
And again, you're
that.
controlling it in real time with the recording?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
totally.
nuts.
I am. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't work. I don't think. I don't think that part. I don't think that part would work like that. That's like, so. Megan McCormick engineered that, and we lived together, and we lived at the studio at that time. This place called the Portal, and it's a real deal Leslie. It's stereo mic'd on both sides, so you're getting the full effect from left. It's stereo mic'd and then mixed that way, so you're getting the full. If you listen to it in headphones, you're getting the full left to right effect. Which is really cool. And yeah, the speeding up and the slowing down. There was just one button on this controller. It's kind of weird.
A fast, slow button.
A fast, slow button for the rotary,
Yeah, and actually maybe we should pause real quick. It occurs to me that a lot of banjo players might not be aware or may not have seen what a Leslie speaker is. So what is this thing that we're talking about?
Yeah. A Leslie speaker. It's super cool. It's the sound of an organ. It's what we all think of as like a B3, Hammond organ. But what it is a speaker box with one speaker that with a fan, I guess, over the speaker that rotates around. Is that how it works?
Some motor that spins it around.
Yeah, the speaker itself isn't. So the speaker points up, I think, and then a giant speaker points up, and then a fan spins in a circle around it, above it, or a little fan of tweeters or something, and it's got 2 speeds. There's a fast speed and a slow speed, and the really cool psychedelic sounding effect of it happens during the speeding up and the slowing down process. So it's not necessarily that you turn it on fast or slow to sound cool. It's that as you're playing the instrument, you keep, and an organ player will do this as they're playing the instrument. They keep making the change on the thing and going from slow to fast. And as that thing speeds up and slows down, you get this really warped sound out of the thing. It's almost like you're going through a whirlpool or a wind tunnel or something like that. And then, you know, that signal path also was similar to the one before. It's an acoustic banjo. There's a noise kick delay. That's a longer running thing. There's a carbon copy delay that's a shorter running thing. And actually, I think there's 2 carbon copies on that. Meg loves the carbon copy. So I'm pretty sure there's two MXR carbon copy delays happening on there.
Is that the carbon copy at the end doing like the feedback loop, the analog delay thing?
Yeah.
I forget what you call that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So yeah, that at that point, that's like me in real time, kneel down on the floor. The drummer and the bass player, James Kittleman on drums and Jeff Saunders on electric bass are just like plugging along on this killer little groove, and I'm like down on the floor with the acoustic banjo run through the multiple carbon copy delays. That's then run into the stereo mic'd Leslie, and I've got to like play something to trigger the delay. You know,
the oscillation. That's
in order to make it. So it's like, so there's just some kind of like, you know, as me just sort of like hitting some D strings and hitting some G strings with my right hand, while I use the left hand to turn that time knob or the feedback knob, I guess, on that MXR carbon copy. And once it builds a nice little feedback loop, then you start to speed it up, and you start to speed it up, and you start to speed it up, and then at one point you take it all the way up and then all the way back really fast. And that's what creates that boom sound, you know. And when you're in the room, it's a really big, when you're in the room through this is like a 15-inch Leslie speaker, you know, so it was like big sounding, man. It was really cool.
Yeah, and that's why it kind of doesn't even matter what you had played on your banjo, because once it starts taking off, it's kind of just getting screwed with anyway.
Yeah, then you're just playing the pedal, but you have to have something to trigger the pedal, you know. So so it happens twice on that track. Actually, I kneel down and I sort of like play a couple little notes and then boom at once, and it's like not quite as good as I had hoped it would be, you know. And so then I just did it again.
Go for it again.
And got it. And that was, you know, that's only, I didn't know if all that would make it on the record. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, this is the one, you know. It was just like, we're just experimenting to see what we can get, you know. And when it came out, it was like, okay, this is actually, that is cool. Turns out we'll keep that, you know. And then I
love it.
But that track, Two Big Hearts, it is like a suite, really, you know. It's because that whole thing that we're talking about is really like the second song in it, essentially, you know, or even maybe almost the third song.
And you got this like I don't know what. Keep going.
The first
part, middle section too.
The first part's just all sixth, like you said. A lot of. Well, there's a couple thirds. There's some thirds and some sixths of blue stuff that moves around. And it's kind of heady. There's like some funky key change stuff. There's like a flat 2 augmented chord. It sounds all weird and jazzy, you know. And that theme sort of goes along, and then there's the rock and roll part, and then that theme comes back, and then you finally get into the other, that newer groove happens, and then there's some lyric stuff that goes on in there, and then eventually, finally, after the big sonic booms, then you come back to the theme from the very beginning with the thirds and the sixth, you know. So it's a lot of fun.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
For sure.
It's an odyssey. Yeah, no doubt.
So you already mentioned about the electric banjo that you used. What acoustic banjo are people hearing on this recording?
The acoustic banjo on the record is the main banjo that I play all the time, have been for a pretty long time. Now, it's a 1979 Ode style C with a neck that Robin Smith put on it for me. So it's a maple neck. It's a very big, fat, wide maple neck with a huge radius and jumbo stainless frets.
And then obviously to get through these effects, you're recording with a pickup. What's your pickup of choice these days? The Fishman Rare Earth pickup has been the one that I've been using for a long time, man. Real long time, you know. Nice.
Yeah.
And was all the acoustic tone the pickup, or were you miking up some of this as well?
On the stuff that sounds like a bluegrass band, the stuff that's like a string band, you know, with bluegrass band instrumentation, it was mic'd up. I want to say a U89, or sorry, a U87.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
I want to say a U87 and a ribbon mic. That's kind of a pretty standard way to mic them, right? And then the pedal chain, DI chain was on its own. But then like on the stuff on that Two Big Hearts track, that's just a DI line. There's no mic on the banjo for that stuff.
When you know it's going to be a little weirder.
Sure. Yeah.
Nice.
It's basically an electric banjo.
I know we've mentioned several of the musicians, but I'm sure we've also forgotten a few. So give some shout outs to whoever else is on the album.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. There's the string band where Julian Pinelli plays fiddle, Cody Kilby on guitar, Dominic Leslie is on mandolin, Travis Book is on the bass. Then there's some electric band stuff where James Kittleman plays drums and Jeff Saunders plays bass. Meg McCormick also plays bass on one track. Lindsay Lou sings on there, some harmony stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Travis Book sings some parts on there. Alex Spiegelman plays the clarinet on I Wonder. That's another thing that happens there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex is awesome, man. He's a monster musician, you know, and he sent me, he had sent some, that's one thing that wasn't done live. That was overdubbed, you know, and he sent me some tracks and they were he sent me a couple passes, you know, and they were just all so good that I was like, how am I supposed to like pick one of the, you know, it was one of those moments where you're like, how do you pick just one of these things to put on the track? And so then I was like, I'm just going to I put two, but after, you know, the song goes, half of the song goes by before the clarinet comes in. Then the clarinet comes in and plays this solo. And after his solo is over and it goes back to the verse of the song, I just put two of his passes in together and panned them left, extreme hard left and hard right.
Know what to play, who'll cry when I leave this old world. I've read all the text, still I wonder what's next for me as I leave this old world. There's good and there's bad, there's happy, there's sad, there's pain and remorse, and there's sorrow of course, and there's a freedom that's granted to each passing soul as that glorious flag is unfurled. I'll be moving ahead, need no more dying bed, but I wonder who cries I leave this old world.
You know, and so there's actually two of him going on playing for a little while there, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I didn't catch that on my listen throughs. I'll have to go back and notice that. That's a cool idea. And then most importantly, where do people purchase this music and listen to it, and maybe even just check you out and check out tour dates or whatever else you have going on?
Well, it's KyleTuttle.com is going to be the place to find any information about me. Purchasing the record, there's going to be some vinyl available. It's not
cool.
There's not a pre-order link or anything yet. But it will be. There's going to be some limited vinyl pressing, so I'm super excited about that. You know, other than the vinyl, it's not going to be on CD, at least not right now. So stream away, I guess.
Right on. Any pizza cutters involved? Any bonus
you can
prizes that we can expect?
There's definitely going to be a handful of a handful of pizza cutters going around for sure. That's anyone that doesn't know, you can get a pizza cutter with my name on it at KyleTuttle.com. And they work. They really cut pizza, and they open bottles too. But there's also going to be some shirts, you know, and some posters and some of that all that fun stuff available for the record.
All right, Kyle. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really digging the album, and everyone should check it out. Lots of banjo goodness to absorb on that. So yeah, thanks for Thanks for chatting.
Excellent. Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here at the Picky Fingers again. All right, man. Thanks for doing this.
Always a pleasure. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. Special thanks once again to Dalton Howard, this episode's VIP supporter of the show. Become a VIP supporter yourself by throwing a few dollars per month over on patreon.com/banjopodcast, or you can always email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to come say hi to me, Elderly Instruments, March 9th, 3 p.m. for that interview with Jim Pankey. I hope to see you there, but otherwise I will see you here next time. So long, folks.